BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good morning and Happy New Year. The sun is just rising here at the Calanais Stones on a freezing midwinter morning as I look out on an expanse of lochs and moorland and snow-covered hills in the distance. I'm among weathered, tall, grey stones set in a central circle. One huge monolith is almost 5 metres high and rows of them stretch out, most notably a long avenue to the north. I've been hearing why they were erected by the earliest farmers and how today's crofters live and work beside them.
We grew up with them. In fact, asking our own children, they'll say, oh yes, we remember playing hide and seek around them and things like that. But we have kind of taken that for granted and it's just been part of our landscape, really. We don't appreciate them as we should do, I don't think, because people that do come and visit them from afar, they're really absorbed by what they see.
I can't emphasise enough how important it was to live in this house looking over the stones. We can walk through our croft. It will take us about 5 minutes to walk up to Calanais Stones. There's such natural life going on around them and they're not commercialised in the slightest. And that is part of the beauty of them.
So, what's the story behind the circle? Alison Sheridan is a prehistoric archaeologist with a deep knowledge of Calanais. We met here to discuss their origins and those first farmers.
If you go right back, there is evidence for a Mesolithic presence, that is, people whose lives would be spent hunting and fishing and gathering wild resources. And then from probably around 3800 BC, farmers will have come, probably from the west coast of mainland Scotland, and they would have brought all of the nuts and bolts of farming with them. So domesticated cattle and sheep, goats and pigs, and also the cereals that they grew. So it would be wheat and barley.
Let's move right into the very centre of the circle now. What's the best understanding of the purpose of these stones?
These would have been a ceremonial monument where people from farming communities in the area would A, get together to create it in the first place, but B, would gather at certain specific times. And we think that midwinter was an important time, around the midwinter solstice, where they could observe the sun shining its beam here. But then it changed its purpose. So around 2500 BC, not only did they add the rows going east and south and west and the avenue, but they also buried somebody. They created a chamber tomb in the middle. Going back to the midwinter thing, it's very important for farming communities to have some kind of reassurance that the days are going to get longer and that the sun is going to shine and their crops are going to come back. And therefore, propitiatory ceremonies to make sure that it does that make an awful lot of sense in an agricultural world.
To erect these massive stones created a huge amount of work and also a lot of knowledge among people that we think of as pretty primitive.
Yes, they were anything but primitive. They were very sophisticated. They were very well travelled. They had long-distance connections with Orkney and with Ireland. We know that. But also it's likely that the people responsible for having these stones erected were the elite of the day. So this was very much a statement of power. Yeah? So they could say, actually, we can control time. We can control what the sun does. So it's a political thing, it's an archaeoastronomical thing, and it's a social thing. Also, getting people together was so important. It was a statement of their identity.
These are Indian runner duck, otherwise known as penguin duck. My name is Claire, and Martin and myself run Calanais alpacas. We're extremely lucky that we look directly onto Calanais Stones. And we came from South Wales. We lived a quarter of a mile off the M4. We had very busy city lives, only owned a hamster before. We now have 182 animals of all different breeds, including chickens, ducks, alpacas, turkeys, peacocks, and little pigs. A sheep.
Now we are standing here at the edge of your croft. Things are getting a bit quieter. The animals are settling down a wee bit because it's getting dark. But we're surrounded by traditional crofts. We see some black-faced sheep on the neighbouring croft and really not many animals at all round about us. You're hardly traditional crofters.
No, we do fit into the criteria of diversification of crofting. If we were doing this as a business, we could make money out of it, but we're personally not interested in that.
You have thousands of visitors coming every year and you don't charge.
No.
Why don't you charge?
We don't charge because we don't want to be a business. As soon as you're a business, there's an expectation of a service. And ultimately, there are two of us that are running this. One of us works full-time as well. And we do this for the pleasure of it. We do it for the sharing and we do it for other people's gain because we see how they find this an oasis of tranquility despite all the noise coming from the animals.
What is it, do you think, about the stones that draws you?
I'm actually a psychiatric doctor, but I'm not working on the island because I'm so busy looking after all of these animals. And my psychiatric MSc was based on the cycle of the moon and its relationship with psychiatric admissions for patients with severe depressive or hypomanic episodes. So when we came here, there was an immediate affinity with both myself and Martin.
And we're speaking round about the winter solstice. Do those events, the summer and winter solstices, do they mean something to you?
They do to some regard. In the winter solstice, it does depend very much what the weather is like. There can be storms beating down, and I've been up there previously. You have to cling onto a stone and take a dash to the next stone without getting blown over. Always looks different whenever you go up there.
There's about 20 ewes here with us. There's a swale tup and there's a blackfish tup.
And hens as well.
And hens, yeah. Snow on the ground this morning and ground is wet underfoot as well, very soft. My name is Kenny McLennan and I've been born and bred here in Calanais. I've been here for over 60 years. This is the family home and croft that we're on. And we live exactly about a mile from the Calanais Standing Stones, which we can see at a distance from parts of the croft.
We're just up above Loch Rogue here and we're looking past the stones onto the hills of Harris, which are covered in snow today. Would you be a traditional crofter, Kenny, with sheep and hens?
Yes, that's very much a traditional crofter. I had cattle until about 2 years ago.
So you've grown up within a mile of the stones, as you say. Do they impact on your life at all?
The impact on my life now, because I have been recently drafted onto the board of the Calanais Visitor Centre, which is the group that looks after the visitor centre adjacent to the stones. And there's a huge £10 million renovation project happening there now. So that's interesting and exciting, and it's great for our community as well.
So does the crofting community benefit from proximity to the stones?
That's a difficult question and probably a catch-22 question. There's a huge benefit with regards to employment, where once the new centre is up and running, and the old centre previously provided a lot of employment, even seasonal employment for young people. The other thing that these kind of big archaeological sites can be seen as a hindrance to development, although I can't say that it has been any hindrance to development in our village. From the crofting point of view, it doesn't impact at all really on the crofting way of life. The only thing that probably could impact is the influx of visitors over the summer months.
Already there are masses of tourists every year. The cruise ships are now bringing thousands every summer, and Calanais is number one on the agenda. Everyone wants to come here.
Everyone wants to come here. It's really the site that anyone coming to the Isle of Lewis will want to see. The numbers now are up to about 150,000 visitors a year. And with the new deepwater port in Stornoway, which, like you say, takes the cruise ships in, that number is significantly going to increase in the years to come.
There are concerns about parking, about disruption. Is that something that you think is going to happen?
It will happen this coming year in 2025 because of the centre being closed and the entire site is being taken over by the contractor. there will be difficulties with parking.
Also contributing to the pressure on the site this year is the approaching phenomenon known as a lunar standstill over the stones, as Alison Sheridan explains.
The moon has not just a monthly cycle, but a long 18.6-year cycle. And once every 18.6 years, or several times during that year, if you're standing at the northern end of this avenue, looking to the horizon there, the moon will appear to rise and then skim along the horizon, which is in the shape of a woman lying down, and then it'll dip and then it'll reappear and it'll shine in the centre of the stone circle. It's magical. It's going to happen 2025, probably 4 times.
That's if it's a clear night. The ability of those earliest farmers to predict astronomical events with such precision is a source of wonder. But Kenny McLennan sees echoes of those skills in peoples who live in close harmony with the land.
It's hugely impressive, and I think that's something that has followed generations down through the ages until very recently. I well remember old folks in the village that could forecast the weather very accurately. This was before we had forecasts on radio and TV and shipping forecasts and this. And that was done through signs of reading clouds and reading wind directions and reading sea state. And I quite believe that these people that were there when the stones were built had that ability to predict things.
There are myths and legends, aren't there, that surround the stones. What are the most popular ones?
There is something about that there was a white cow could be seen at some points, and this would be a sign that the cows would be fertile during times of difficulty and hardship. I don't know if it's got any impact or truth, but it might come from the fact I remember an old fellow in the village telling me that they used to tether cows round the stones at one time. When grass was short, that crofters would go up to the stones and they would just tether a cow to the stone. So maybe that's where that came from, but I'm not quite sure.
How does it feel cultivating land on a site which has been used and farmed by the earliest farmers 5,000 years ago?
It certainly is a privilege and not something that I would ever have thought ever in my life that I would end up doing. It is also a privilege to be surrounded by traditional crofters and to have been completely accepted into the crofting world within Calanais and beyond. We take an awful lot of advice from them because ultimately, however rare our breeds are, a sheep is a sheep. And we've had an enormous amount of information and assistance from them, so we're forever grateful for that.
It's something that we've grown up with, but it's something that we need to treasure. You know, in conjunction with the community and Historic Environment Scotland and all these people that have an interest in that. It's fantastic that we have archaeological sites like that over and above the scenery and the beauty of the place. And we have to be good custodians of these stones.
Today's programme was produced and presented by me, Nancy Nicholson.